All right, everyone, we should be live. Let's make sure that's actually the case. And of course, turn our volume off so we're not talking to ourselves. Just a sec. Let me make sure that all my tabs are in order here. Yeah, okay. Also, I did add an extra news story because now, as of today, Rumble is now public. It's listed on NASDAQ. That'll be fairly big news, so we'll be talking about that. Speaking of Rumble, if you're watching on YouTube, keep in mind, there will be a link pinned in the chat at the top. InfoWars is less than 100 subscribers away from the big 110. We're still playing catch up. We're about 400 behind that. So if during the course of this live stream enough people sign up on Rumble for Clankdom and follow the channel, we will be the first to 110,000 there ahead of InfoWars. We're not the first on the platform, but we're having a friendly competition. And we are narrowing the gap at a considerable rate. And the baby has decided to join in on the fun of the video and chat. You can say hello, I suppose. Yeah. She probably is hungry at the moment, if I had to guess. Anyway, let's make sure that we're live on Rumble. Let us make sure. Yep, we're live over there. Already over 100 people watching, actually. Rumble is really taking off. New tech in general is skyrocketing at the moment because old tech sites keep making more and more fucking mistakes. They had a good thing going and they decided to throw it to the wind, and so now people are using other platforms. Again, announcement as well. Another reason you should join in on Rumble, specifically at this time, is that I will be eventually doing some exclusive live streaming there. I'll probably post on Odyssey too, although I wish one or both sites would work with StreamYard in order to make sure that I can see the comments on that side, because otherwise it's hard for me to switch between tabs to pay attention to 2 or 3 chats at the same time. It's becoming a problem. Also, Social Blade has Odyssey listed, but for some reason Rumble and BitChute are not listed as far as their statistics. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on with that. I would think that those would be big ones to add in, considering the plurality of many millions of users. But they're dragging their heels, and it's making me angry. Anyway, first news story here for the day. President Biden tells 60 Minutes that U.S. men and women would defend Taiwan in the event of a Chinese invasion. However, after our interview, a White House official, so not Biden, told us the U.S. policy on Taiwan has not changed. World War III is trending for a reason right now, just to be clear. And it's not looking good for Joey Biden because he's pledging that we would start a nuclear war if Taiwan were invaded. The way in which to handle the situation is extremely simplistic. We simply declare Taiwan in our mind as a sovereign entity. We recognize them as sovereign and strike a military alliance. China, therefore, cannot attack without firing the first shot, so to speak. But if China attacks a nation that we're not directly allied with, a nation that we don't even recognize as sovereign, and Joe Biden thinks that we would pony up military power to defend them, that leaves us in a precarious position, one in which you could have a World War III, possible nuclear exchange. It is possible for that to happen. I think he should be removed from office over this. It's clear he doesn't know what's going on. The fact that his White House staff constantly countermand him on things that he says is clearly evidence that the man is not playing with a full deck. He should not be in the stewardship role that he's in. It's becoming too dangerous. He's literally, I love how the legacy media will talk about dangers to democracy. Well, here you go. You've got an individual who is claiming that we would join in on a war effort to defend an entity that we don't even declare sovereign because the U.S. leadership are pussies. Trump coming the closest since the 70s to recognizing Taiwanese sovereignty, actually. Bickering about that. Also, I love the false equivalence that we have right now from coping liberals. The left is panning this. I'll give the leftoids credit. They're panning this as the war rhetoric that it is. They are correct. They're in line with MAGA, by the way, in doing so, which is hilarious to me. The liberal Democrats are in cope mode right now and trying to talk about how Trump said that we were going to be tough on China, and now they're whining about World War III because of Taiwan. I'd like to point out that fixing trade imbalances, demanding transparency from China on its currency, and countering their tariffs is not quite the same as threatening to use military means to deflect China if they invade something that we don't really apparently have an unambiguous problem over China claiming as its own. China claims ownership of Taiwan. The United States has stepped aside since the middle of the 1970s and said, we don't recognize Taipei. We recognize Beijing as the lord and master of all China, including Taiwan in the de facto sense. But we have this wishy-washy ambiguity policy with regards to Taiwan, saying that we also consider them to be effectively autonomous. How did that work out for Hong Kong? It didn't work out now, did it? Hong Kong, of course, much smaller, not much military capabilities, and directly associated with China by land. It is apples to oranges in the strategic sense. China could take Taiwan over, although they would lose an enormous proportion of their military doing so. And the other solution to the problem is also clear. We keep selling weapons to Taiwan. Why don't we pressure them to change their constitution, to martialize their society Switzerland style, so that they have armories and home ownership of firearms in their country, and therefore you have an enormous force of millions of partisans that would be able to fight back. The Chinese would have trouble landing for logistic purposes, more than a few 100,000 troops on Taiwan, even if they managed to overrun their navy and their air defense. Anti-ship missiles would be opposing them. You'd have the air defense, et cetera, et cetera. That force would not be able to go beyond its beachhead very easily if you had a martial population there. Instead, you have a fairly beefy reserve force in Taiwan, but you don't have a martial population. This is a problem. We should be pressuring them and saying, look, feed them the same half-truth from World War II about the Japanese seriously considering invading California before realizing that there would be more rifles opposing them than in their own hands, simply from the civilian population. It might not be entirely true because the plan was never seriously considered, but it was optioned. They talked about it, and they wisely decided against it. Closest they came was a couple of subs, I think, fired on a petroleum refinery at one point. I don't know if they did any damage. I can't remember. Alarian Horizon, Beijing Biden is illegitimate. Who runs the USA? The deep state does. The same people that controlled the Bush and Obama regimes, by the way. Not a banned account. When will the feds reform doing entrapment with CIs? Never, because they have a good time doing it. It's a good money grift. That's basically what it is, by the way. We've already got about 2,500 people watching cross-platform. If you are watching on YouTube, keep in mind you're going to miss some exclusive streams if you don't follow me on Rumble. We're still competing with InfoWars, and they're very close to the goal of 110,000 subs. By the end of this particular live stream, one of the channels may have hit that, either Styx Hexenhammer, your own favorite creator, or InfoWars, in which we're in a friendly competition to that point. I think the fact that Clankdom is within striking distance is already itself a testament to the lasting power of Clankdom. Speaking of which, it's celebratory Clank time. Yeah, it's raining. I've got like rain on my glasses actually from going outside. So clank, clank, get your coffee or your tea, or I don't know, maybe you're mixing a margarita. Leave the spoon in that too. And that's what I'm talking about. Need lots and lots of caffeine on a cold day. It was fairly nice earlier. It was sunny and everything, and for the last 30 minutes, it's been raining. Nick Santini, today I'm going to be leaving my toxic auto part delivery job for a better job as a cashier for a local grocery store. Wish me luck. Good luck, Nick. WJ Dad. Hey, Styx, is your Stolas experience documented or recounted in detail somewhere? It's in the occult playlist, I believe. Just search for Stolas. Within that, you should find it. The Landlord Harassment Channel. Please name your videos after Styx songs for a month. Oh, songs for a month. Oh, that'd be funny. Renegade comes to mind. The Southern V. Feed that baby, my boy. She is upstairs with her mother at the moment, so she's on feeding duty while Daddy works. Zeranx was watching yesterday's stream, and someone asked about a PC hardware compromises. I have a four-year-old laptop and had to install Windows 10 because onboard MoBoard option that it allow Windows 7 install was disabled. I'll get a different laptop, I would say. Raylan Givens, your thoughts on crypto are well known. Would you give your thoughts on bullion? Do you see future money systems as a hybrid crypto and gold silver coins? I think fiat will still remain the flavor of the day for normal transactions, but digital will rise. And, bullion, silver, gold, etc., will always be denominated in those currencies. So they're all interchangeable. I don't know. I want to go back to Windows XP myself. It was the best of all the Windows platforms. Not a controversial opinion, by the way. So yeah, Biden is effectively threatening World War III at the moment against the Chinese. Huge escalation. I seem to recall that when Donald Trump effected trade deal renegotiations, it was considered to be warmongering by the same liberals that are coping now. And then his own White House staff countermanded him. Oh, we haven't changed our mind on Taiwan. So you're still holding with the wiggly noodle sort of approach. And China doesn't really respect that at this point. This isn't the 2000s. China has a much bigger economy and military capability now, and they're looking for new land. They're looking at Taiwan the same way Russia looked at Crimea. It's much more difficult because it's an island and because Taiwan is much more well defended. And it's more difficult because they do have some alliances with nearby nations. But China is capable of taking over Taiwan unless we martialize the population and we make it clear that we recognize Taipei as a sovereign entity. That's what we should do. It'll prevent war. They probably want war. Sparky, Sticks, where did you get the idea that India threw Russia under the bus? Was it from the UK MSM recently taking Modi out of context? And not really out of context. India has been straddling the line within BRICS now for years. They're a member of the same currency, economic arrangement as China, but they have border skirmishes with them. India has been straddling the line sort of like Turkey has done. Only India has actually managed to stabilize its economy, unlike the Turks. So, yeah, I think that Biden should be removed from office as quickly as possible because that sort of war rhetoric, it sounds like, he's going full George W. And liberals, supposedly enlightened, college-educated liberals, are all gung-ho for it. All of a sudden, you expect them to be wearing suspenders and parading around with the U.S. flag. It'll be very funny. Paracelsus Undera, cryptocurrency is an abstraction of fiat currency and should be treated as such. Metals are real wealth. Anything is wealth if it's conceived of as being wealth. Zeros and ones, slips of paper, a metal that you're not using for an industrial purpose or anything particularly useful and just sitting around with it. Food, medium of exchange. Seashells. Cold Warrior, when I signed up on Rumble, it still said 109,000. Does that mean I don't get a trip to the chocolate factory? We're very close. Let's see exactly how many subscribers we have actually on Rumble. Live fact checking. We are at 109,561. And InfoWars only has 67 more subscribers to go. So we have to do like 5-1 in order to catch up with them at this point. I think that is possible, however. We are growing much more quickly over the last 48 hours. We'll see what happens. To Captain Farskiss, it wouldn't be a good idea to let China re-annex Taiwan, because then they would control the semiconductor industry. If you think that Chinese intrusions into U.S. data systems are bad, they'd get 10 times worse. It's clearly in our interest to defend Taiwanese sovereignty, and we should oppose communism everywhere, and we shouldn't consider any socialist or communist regime legitimate anyway. China's not a legitimate nation. The government of all China is in exile in Taipei. Just recognize it, strike a military alliance, tell China you're not going to do anything to the Taiwanese because we'll nuke you, and they're not going to do anything because they would fear reprisal, unless you have a non-serious leadership in D.C. But Biden's not serious. He's not a leader. Sparky, the West is liable to push Taiwan closer to China. I think that you'll find that there's a huge amount of anti-communist sentiment within Taiwan. They're not interested. And nobody sent 10 Australian dollars without a comment. Thank you. Opium Gardener. So the same liberals who believe the whole General Milley lie of Trump threatened China are not saying anything about Joey's warmongering. No, of course not, because Orange Man bad. Next news story. They enriched us. Now, the heartwarming tale of Martha's Vineyard. Migrants' 44-hour visit leaves indelible mark on Martha's Vineyard. This is a CNN article. This is the fluff piece to end all goddamn fluff pieces. Well, over the course of nearly 2 days, We got to know all of these people and all about their lives. And, we gave them food and shit because we're all fucking millionaires on the island. And how wonderful it was. We were briefly more diverse. We were enriched by the fact that various illegal aliens from Venezuela came. Very, very funny that they wouldn't look down on people who fled socialism, considering that Martha's Vineyard overwhelmingly votes far left. Very, very interesting. I would think they'd say, oh my God, these poor people are so delusional. They think that socialism is what caused the collapse in Venezuela. Didn't they read that Vox article about how it was actually state capitalism's fault? You know that the Karens on the island are talking about it right now to each other, saying, oh my God, thank goodness that blew over. I was able to get rid of some of that spare clothing I had in the basement for the last 5 years. And, I got rid of some of my canned green beans that nobody else wanted, but they're socialists, so, they'll eat anything. And thank God for all of those enriched people, those diverse people. And thank God they left as well. That's what they're saying. You were enriched. Yeah, for 48 hours. By the way, there will be more planes coming. Maybe you can keep them next time if they're so enriching. I think that Martha's Vineyard needs more permanent diversity. Censored. Did President Trump walk past U.S. flags with no stars upon his last address? It was Charles's Twitter that launched the reset announcement. Figures. I don't know. A Daily Llama. Biden cheered for war rhetoric by the left, yet Trump was called a warmonger for wanting fair trade with China. OMB. Yeah, I mean, the hypocrisy is staggering, but Orange Man Bad is really the ultimate cover story for things. You can hold opinions that are clearly contradictory, clearly contravene each other, are totally irreconcilable, and all you have to do is justify them by saying that everything that Donald Trump ever did was terrible. Elmar001, should DeSantis send more illegal migrants to Martha's Vineyard, or is 50 enough to make a point? He should send 500 to Martha's Vineyard and overrun them. And the Texans and Arizonans should join in. Target Martha's Vineyard with one massive barrage of people and drive the point home fucking more. It worked. DeSantis definitely takes the win in that particular exchange. Abbott, by the way, sending more to New York City. We'll be covering that separately. It's funny, when they show up in a blue city, all of a sudden people complain about humans being used as pawns and not having the resources to deal with this shit. What do you think the fucking southern border's like, dude? They don't have the resources. They're not allowed to have they're not allowed to take state control over their own fucking southern borders. I like how they say, well, they've got all this money to bus them to New York City or fly them into Martha's Vineyard. Why don't they use that money to help accommodate people locally? They're not allowed to. The federal government has invoked absolute supremacy over the border situation and is failing completely. They're not allowed to divert funds to that. State forces aren't really allowed to participate with what ICE and others are doing. They're understaffed. They're underfunded. The border wall is a goddamn joke. It was improving, but you still have a bunch of gaps in it. Not a bad account. Is racist anti-racism finally waning in America? It does seem to be dealt blow after blow. We'll see what the Supreme Court does with the Harvard admissions process next. So is Millie going to warn the Chinese military if the U.S. attacks West Taiwan? The guy should be drawn and quartered for his actions. Yeah, they're not going to do shit. If Taiwan were invaded tomorrow, I don't expect the Biden administration would do anything. By the way, I mean, technically it's the proper response. There's nothing short of a nuclear exchange that you can do. Do you think that the U.S. military, under its current woke leadership, is even capable of defending Taiwan? I don't. Let the Japanese or the Australians or the Filipinos get involved. They do a better job, I think. If Vietnam gets involved, China withdraws within a couple of hours, remembering its numerous failures before. So yeah, the NIMBYs feel enriched by the same people that they deported from their island back to Cape Cod. But they were very, very happy that they were there, very briefly. They were happy about that. Night season on Rumble, the bums will always lose. Next news story, by the way, to all of you on Rumble, how many people are live there? Almost 1,300 watching live again. It's 2-1 to YouTube. But the actual engagement level is about twice as high. So another reason to join me on the platform. Rumble is now listed on NASDAQ under RUM, so RUM. It invokes imagery of pirates, which is why people on Twitter are flying the pirate flag next to it to celebrate. This means it is now a publicly traded company. We'll read Pavlovsky's spiel here. We are Rumble. We are for people with something to say and something to share who believe in authentic expression and want to control the value of their own creations. We create technologies that are immune to cancel culture because everyone benefits when we have access to more ideas, diverse opinions, and dialogue. Join us. We are on a mission to protect a free and open internet. It's new tech is definitely something I'm glad that I bet on at this point, not just with Rumble, but with all of the others, Odyssey and BitChute and Minds and Subscribestar and all of these other things, really doing well. For a while there, I'm talking like 2016, even 2015, some of the alternative sites that cropped up didn't really work. You'll remember Patreon. They got canceled. You'll remember, what was it? Maker Support, I think it was called, which might have been a scam, actually. I never got, by the way, the payout that they promised me in the wake of folding. I had, several $100s, not a huge amount, waiting me. And I was promised that I would be getting Bitcoin to shore that up, and it never happened. I know that I was one of the larger creators that was using their fucking site briefly before it folded. Again, it may have been some sort of scheme. VidMe comes to mind. Technically not new tech at all. It was set up basically by the Reddit people. I think I was the 4th largest on the entire platform when they finally folded because they made a really dumb decision. They decided to delist political content from trending. And so people who were arriving on their site in enormous numbers, who were gravitating there because they're like, well, we've got no other place to make material, or I may not have another place to make material. I'm getting onto this other site that seems promising. They screwed them all. They wanted German gaming channels to be the flavor of the month on their site. They alienated us, and it was a bad idea, and they folded. That is not happening now. BitChute's doing fine. Rumble is doing fine. Odyssey's doing fine. Subscribestar is doing fine. Minds.com is doing fine. Substack is goddamn soaring on a yearly basis. All of these new alternatives are doing far better than last generation of new tech. That's why I no longer use the term alt tech. It's no longer just an alternative to the mainline tech platforms that hold their monopolies and duopolies. It's become much more than that. This is now a NASDAQ-listed company evaluated at $500 million. A couple of years ago, it was mocked and ridiculed as being irrelevant. Now they have hit pieces against them on a regular basis because they're platforming people that have been banned on other platforms. The same is true of all of the others, especially video hosting. Video hosting, of all of the new tech reach, is definitely the one that's taken off the most. And second to that, blogging function, Substack and others. Those two functions especially. I have a feeling that the financial sector will be next. So new tech partnering with banking, payment processing, doing that. Gab, of course, is already doing that itself as well. Sparky, if King Charles III doesn't obey Klaus Schwab, Klaus will have him replaced with Meghan Markle. Ironically, then Prince Charles was the founder of WEF. Salty Ironworker, Tim Pool is too black pilly for me, so today I decided to stop supporting him and instead take that 10 a month and give it to you. As of today, I'm officially $20 tier clanker. Money well spent, in my opinion. Keep up the great work. I do appreciate the money. Thank you very much. Although I would say I really like Tim Pool. I do just think that he's more pessimistic, I think, than me. Like the way that he looks, the way he analyzes things, he comes to more black-pilled conclusions. Sometimes I think he's right. Sometimes we definitely agree on the state of affairs in the world, like with that one teacher there with the enormous prosthetic boobs, effectively trolling the entire world, and there are people calling that brave and stunning and so forth. There's definitely agreement there. I just don't think that we're going to have a societal collapse and everything will fall apart, et cetera, et cetera. I disagree with Tim Pool on that. And nobody. Hey, Sticks, forgot to ask you, this is my last super chat. Will there be a Chinese invasion of Taiwan in the near future thanks to Biden's stupid message? I don't think that they're genuinely gearing up towards that at this particular time. I think that they have a much longer term strategy that eventually seeks to incorporate Taiwan into China. They would rather it not be a military intervention. They'd rather subvert the political system there and have a pro-China party that asks for reunification. That could happen. But the sentiments against them and they don't have forever. Their economy is collapsing as we speak. They may get desperate. But really, when that's happening to your economy is not necessarily the greatest time to invade your neighbor either. Unfortunately, as long as the possibility exists, people should be worried simply because the possibility exists. Either fold them into the Western sphere, grab up Taiwan, and add them to NATO if you really wanted to. Either partner with Taiwan more directly, recognize their sovereignty, and arm their civilian population to prevent any shenanigans. Or you have to deal with the fact that eventually China will gobble them up. Charles Christensen, Sapagudus. I don't know what that refers to. Next news story. Durham's Russiagate claim exposes FBI and DOJ's years-long misinformation campaign. Yes, this is about the Danchenko case, Igor Danchenko. U.S.-based Russian lawyer charged with 5 counts of making a false statement to the Bureau was cashing a check from the FBI as a paid informant from March 2017 to October 2020, special counsel Durham claimed. The Durham probe has uncovered one of the greatest political scandals of the century. And my point is not about the scandal itself. That's huge. The bigger scandal, somehow bigger than Danchenko being a paid informant, and it's similar to the Hunter Biden laptop case. The stuff on there is scandalous. There was quid pro quo going on with the then vice president. It was covered up. It's the cover-ups, though, that are more intriguing and more pertinent and more important. They're not being reported on by any aspect of the legacy media. How many reports has Fox News done on the Danchenko claims of Durham? How many have they made really about Hunter Biden's laptop? I've probably made more on a goddamn YouTube show than all of the Fox News network has over the last month. Clearly, something is terribly wrong when that's the case. If a network that does 1,000 goddamn stories in a day covers it less often than a single YouTuber, it's effectively another layer of a cover-up. Aliza right now. 2 American dudes went to live in the settlements in Samaria so they could see firsthand what the situation is. They report their findings on their YouTube channel, The Israel Guys. By the way, they are not Jewish. Interesting. Sparky, Prince Charles was a founder, not the founder. Part of the same general group of people. The usual gang of idiots. Aaron C., is it too bold to outright predict World War III coming soon? I don't think that it will, or I hope not. Much as I would like to go scav the wastelands and, do all that shit. And if everyone dies, you can pillage all of their belongings. Much as though I would like to find dog meat out there waiting for me and scav the wasteland and set up auto turrets and all these other fun things. It would be kind of interesting to be in a post-apocalyptic environment. You got to realize that when you look at the sanitized versions in movies and video games, the real problem would be cholera. The real problem would be rife disease, rabies outbreaks, and predatory animals. Unfortunately, not mutants, not space aliens, not an invasion by a foreign power that's probably also been decimated in the situation. No, by disease. Nature will kill you. And humankind may not actually survive the onslaught. It may get knocked back to the Stone Age at the very least. Unfortunately, there probably wouldn't actually be a 3Dog broadcasting retro vintage music or something like that. Very sad. I just wish we could have that dystopian future instead of all the alternatives, but it's a long shot. I would do my best to find as many vinyl records as I can, find a radio station that still has a working generator and start broadcasting to the wasteland. But I'd probably just die of cholera. To be clear, I would probably poop myself to death. So would you. That Manx guy used to be Republican. You and a few other common sense people convinced me to be independent, leaning libertarian. Good. Yeah. Never join a politically partisan group. Like even the Libertarian Party, they've definitely improved in the wake of the Mises Caucus taking over. But I'm still not going to join the party because the next time around it might be, Gary Johnson again. So there's no reason to. A crafty Huragok, as an African nation, can I get some help making the 3 walls from the Attack on Titan universe on Madagascar Island on Pixel Planet? We're no longer doing Pixel Planet actively, but people can do that if they want to. JWT6577. Have you heard anything about rumors the riots a couple weeks ago in northern China might have been a failed coup attempt? Doubtful. Not large enough. Michael Cricklow, please give weekly stock analysis on stocks on Rumble. Rumble stocks. I might actually buy in on Rumble stock. Disclaimer, not fiscal advice. I'm considering making a buy. I guess now is the time to do it. Skycloud Rain, late to the stream, but since you are mentioning China, have you had a chance to check out WWIII? It's his sort of field of geopolitics. I haven't actually gotten a chance yet. I've been balls to the wall busy. I finished, by the way, interior illustrations on a 5th work as of this morning. So I now have 5 lined up ready to go. I'm hoping to get them all out before the end of September, which means, unfortunately, I have to take time out of my editing to do cover art. My least favorite part, by the way, of the editing process. Garrett, today is my birthday. Woke up and pulled a muscle in my back. Reminder of my aging, just a year behind you, Sticks. Happy birthday, by the way. I never have that problem. I've got no real physical conditions of any kind. Miku 4X Spot, I got jury duty today. Pray for me. Remember jury nullification, depending on the charges. You can make a difference. Or you can tell him to get out of jury duty. Hey, I know what nullification is, and I'm not afraid to use it. Just don't get yourself arrested for contempt of court. Next news story, and this is, again, another goddamn Biden warmongering attempt. He's trying to do the big boy thing, but really it just looks like old man anger. Biden warns Putin against using nuclear weapons in Ukraine. Don't. Biden said the U.S. response to further potential attack by Russia would be consequential. So you're threatening the Russians, but you're not saying what you would do. And you're bringing up a topic that no reasonable person would suggest is a possibility. Why on earth would Russia, with a severe manpower superiority and many more weapons, resort to using nukes? Why would it do that? Under what auspices would Russia nuke a nation that's right next to NATO? It's right next to the European Union, causing fallout on those nations. There is no possibility. Russia's not going to nuke Kiev because it doesn't get its way and has to withdraw. Unless you assume that Putin has flown the coop. He's gone over the cuckoo's nest. I don't consider Putin to be an irrational actor. I consider him to be egotistical and authoritarian, but I don't think that he's insane. I don't think that he's lost his mind. And he faces some pushback even from within Russia. Why, since you started out the war without control of the regions you've invaded, you're the invader in those regions. And it's not clear whether annexation or a proxy state is what they're aiming for anyway. If you get driven back, other than getting egg on your face and having a major humiliation because you lost against Ukraine, what else changes? Nothing. You go back to diplomacy, you attempt to normalize relations, and you probably try again later. Why the fuck would you nuke a country you're trying to invade in the first place? You'd end up irradiating your own troops. It wouldn't make any fucking sense. I guess the idea is that they might use battlefield nukes. Most of the Russian nukes are not battlefield nukes. Do you have any idea how many megatons of blast a Satan missile releases? 30 goddamn megatons. So we're talking Castle Bravo mode. Deploy that on a battlefield. See what happens. With the radioactive fallout from that, every nuclear monitor in the world would be going off within a couple of days. It would require the universal condemnation of Russia. They'd get condemned by North Korea for such an action. They'd be a pariah state, collapsing the economy, ensuring that Putin immediately gets assassinated and removed, and someone takes his place and unilaterally apologizes to the world and says, look, the dude went crazy. We're really begging your forgiveness. We'll pay Ukraine a bunch of money. We're sorry for glassing 1 million people. That's what would happen. Russia does not have the kind of resource base necessary to isolate itself from the entire rest of the world. It would exist. It wouldn't be able to maintain most of its military. It wouldn't have the money to do so. They require components at the very least from China. China would condemn them. They're not going to use fucking nuclear weapons on a non-nuclear state. As far as I know, the only nations in the world that proclaim a willingness to do that are North Korea and Israel. North Korea says, this was a few days ago, yeah, we might use nuclear weapons if someone fucks with us. If Kim Jong-un gets killed, we will nuke you. That could involve a non-nuclear state, so that's a pretty deep threat. I reported on that at the time. And Israel has an ambiguous policy where they won't even claim that they have nuclear weapons. They won't confirm or deny, although we know that they have them. They have threatened that if Iran attempts to develop a nuke, they might act preemptively. that would be on the same order as Vladimir Putin, by the way, nuking Kiev. But it's not going to happen. So why is Biden pretending that? You will change the face of war unlike anything since World War II, Biden said. So please don't do any nuclear escalation. Why the fuck would they do that? It wouldn't make any goddamn sense. Biden is basically making up a story and then openly refuting the story that he's made up. They did this to Trump, by the way, multiple times. Sparky was an urban youth in the 70s, real post-apocalyptic. Good times. When suburbanites escaped after 6 p.m., I had the city to myself. I was the Omega Man. Lance Corporal veteran Steven Crowder and Alex Jones interview said the globalist policies aren't about environment, but anti-human depopulation, attempt basically to kill them. I think that it's more about control over money and resources than anything else. Ultramaga 721. Sticks, any thoughts on changing your handle from 666 to 777 since you've ascended from all forms of religion and become a dad? No, because that wouldn't keep peon brains from staying away from the channel. If somebody believes that they can't follow a channel because of numbers in the username and they're that superstitious, they're not going to like my kind of analysis. They don't have the mental capability to enjoy it. Next news story. U.S. must take reasonable steps to protect unborn and reject inhumane abortion policies of China and North Korea. This is by Lindsey Graham. He's penning this on Fox. Here's my advice to the Republican Party. It's all well and good that you believe that there should be federal level abortion limits, even though you did. The left, by the way, is correct on this. You campaigned to end Roe because you said it was a states' rights issue. I've warned for several years now about this very possibility. Lindsey Graham should be roundly and completely ignored. Muzzle him. Mitch McConnell should take him out behind the goddamn woodshed. You're making problems, trying to force through legislation that would immediately be injuncted and ruled unconstitutional because you've undercut your own argument already. The fact that you don't agree with late-term abortions being available in places like Virginia and in Vermont, by the way, that's fine. I consider that a problem too. But it's not a problem that needs to be addressed at the federal level anyway. There's no reason for it. I would point out, when we talk about the legislation that Graham put forward, the 15-week abortion limitation, it would be in line with the norm in Western Europe. It would be in line with the norm here. It would be in line with the norm in most blue states, by the way, as well. There's nothing onerous about proposing the specific Protecting Pain-Capable Unborn Children Act of Lindsey Graham. I don't have a problem with it. As long as there are exceptions for a person whose life is in danger, there's some medical reason, then yeah, that's fine. That goes beyond the first trimester. It's actually more generous than some Republicans would want. A lot of them, I think, would shave it to 12 or even 8 weeks. That's not the problem. The timing of you proposing it is a problem. And the fact that you formally declared it was a states' rights issue is also a problem. Trying to dovetail it in with China and North Korea is not going to be relevant to the kind of people that you need to win over in order to even propose such legislation. It's not going to happen. The legislation has effectively been smacked down by McConnell anyway. He's saying, oh God, Lindsey, I know that you used to suck John McCain's cock in the literal and figurative sense. I know that you've got some real deep problems. I know that you don't want MAGA to increase, and so you're trying to throw the midterms. Why don't you go fuck yourself? Shut the hell up. Sit in the corner. Why is it that Mitch McConnell didn't weigh in, didn't call Fox News and tell him, do not platform Lindsey Graham? Nobody likes the fucker. Republicans don't like him. MAGA, certainly. Democrats think he's the devil. Maybe he is. Lindsey Graham is a charlatan. Holy shit. Some people think that he's being paid by the liberals to do this. I mean, it's possible. I would point out, though, that right-leaning independent voters would probably lean towards supporting his particular proposal. But it's being branded by the entire legacy media as a ban on abortion at the federal level. The problem is you can't really defend against that line when you've made the states' rights argument for decades and decades. Let the states decide abortion legality. Roe v. Wade must fall so they can do that. The second Roe v. Wade ends, you decide it's a national issue all of a sudden. Very intriguing. Just blatant authoritarianism as usually. HM, where is your 100K YouTube plaque? It's back in the United States at the moment. Black Bull 77, can we get this World War III BS over so we can focus on World War IV, the payback? World War IV will be fought with twigs and rocks. Sparky, both Mitch and Lindsay are anti-Trump globalists. Yeah, to his credit, Mitch McConnell making one of the few good decisions he's ever made and telling Lindsey Graham to shut the hell up. Steve Watt, thank you, 50 Australian dollars. Vinyl records are warm sounding and Brandon and his team are a bunch of warmongering clowns. New money for the 666 and God bless from Australia. I want to see Australia sometime. I'm eating kangaroo. Already had it once. I thought it was pretty good. By the way, ostrich burgers are delicious. It's like a much better version of chicken. It literally tastes like chicken, but it's got a texture to it that's far better. You just have to make sure not to burn it. It's unfortunately, it's easy to do that if you're used to cooking with red meat burgers. Asphalt Man 11, any comment on the largest collection of useless jackasses in the world gathering today? Some call it the UN General Assembly, but we know what it really is. Oh, I didn't know that they were having a General Assembly. People are slipping and sending me news tips. I am offended here. Over on Rumble, Andrus Berzins, English muffin or blueberry muffin? English muffin, definitely, with lots and lots of melted butter, finely toasted. You can put other shit on it too if you want, but it really just needs butter. It's got to be the authentic kind with lots and lots of crenellation, so it looks kind of like you're eating a toasted sponge. Ultramaga721, all career politicians are career criminals. Absolute term limits are the only way to break the corruption wheel, as both parties are the same party. Well, then why would term limits matter? They'd still be from those two parties. Wouldn't help. Now, what you need is you need more constraints on their ability to be corrupt. You need more transparency and more limitations on state power in general. Kyle 3000, not sure if you've ever talked about it, but did you see Crowder and Alex Jones' cuck on libertarianism? No, I didn't, actually, to tell the truth. Next news story, New York City receives 2 more busloads of migrant asylum seekers, the illegals. They're not really seeking asylum generally. 2 more buses of migrants disembark at New York City Port Authority. Yes, New York City has been complaining about this for months. The Texas government has bused more than 2,500 migrants to New York City since August 5th. Texas Governor Abbott said in a press release on Saturday, Texas has also bused over 8,000 migrants to D.C., and more than 600 from Texas have arrived in Chicago. Now, Martha's Vineyard, of course, is on that list too, mainly from Florida. I would beg Abbott, please team up with the Floridians and the Arizonans and overrun Martha's Vineyard. Let's see how they react to more than 50 people. Let's make it 200 or 300 people and see what the reaction is. Will they open up their church when they run out of shelter there? Where will they be? Will they be A, sleeping on the fucking ground like animals, or B, will the people of Martha's Vineyard very generously extend courtesy and allow them into their rental homes? It'll be the former, and it'll be fucking hilarious. Yeah, it'll be using these people as human pawns, but they're already sleeping under overpasses in Texas anyway, because there's no room in any shelter system down there for them. So what's the difference other than you've exposed the hypocrisy of the people that have made the border shitty in the first place? Preamble, a toasted sponge, isn't that just a crumpet? Never had crumpets. We don't have those in the United States. We're not English. Mr. Wonderful, I used to breed 3-legged kangaroos for the extra drumstick. Gave up because they were impossible to catch. Sparky, establishment had SCOTUS not let sleeping dogs lie by flipping Roe v. Wade so Dems would have an issue for the midterms. Yeah, I mean, they did force the issue, although ultimately it buoys right-wing groups as much as left-wing groups, I think. I don't think it'll have as big an impact as people think. When they do the hashtag Rovember thing, I'm thinking that thou art a bit hyperbolic. Bara, have you ever tried camel? Tastes like lean beef. No, I've tried buffalo and kangaroo and alligator and ostrich and duck and rabbit and a million other things. Buffalo is probably my favorite overall. You put that shit in a stew and slow cook it. It's the best thing ever. It falls right apart. It literally melts in your mouth like the finest goddamn beef. It's also lower fat somehow. I don't know exactly how it's so loose and delicious. But yeah, they're sending more to New York City. And of course, the New York City mayor immediately complaining about it, trying to open new centers. They're having problems. Adams, a Democrat, condemned rogue Republican governors for transporting migrants from the border to elsewhere in the country. See, if Biden does it, it's okay. If Greg Abbott or DeSantis or someone does it, it's trafficking. He took issue with the new development of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis sending 2 planes of illegal immigrants to the ritzy Massachusetts island of Martha's Vineyard, where officials largely support sanctuary policies. Again, remember, 80+% vote for Joe Biden on every part of Martha's Vineyard. They voted for these policies. And their shelter system is currently containing 8,000 of those 11,000 people that were sent, which means that they're putting strain on their capability of taking care of the issue. Put more strain on them. Get other states to do the same thing and increase the number. If you have to use taxpayer money in order to do so, that's perfectly fine. The people of your states are enjoying the spectacle of overrunning New York City with people that can't be cared for. If they're not going to get proper care anyway, because they're literally sleeping under bridges in places like El Paso, why not just send them to a nicer part of the country with very generous liberals with a huge amount of money? They can open their wallets and open up their homes to these people. But see, that's the problem. Half the structures on Martha's Vineyard are just rentals anyway. They're not even year-round occupation. Which one of these rich people is going to say, well, I'm so fortunate. I can spend $25,000 fucking dollars a month renting out this 20-room mansion. Why can't I take in 100 migrants? Could probably fit in my house. They're good people. They enrich us. You know, Martha's Vineyard claiming that they feel enriched after almost 48 hours of these migrants being here. These people need to get more generosity. They're always saying taxpayers should fund more welfare. Well, you don't need the government to do it. You've got the money on hand. Hand them wads of cash. Tell them to at least buy a pup tent. Paracelsus Underach, abortion is eugenics. The progressives couldn't get away with sterilizing the minority population in the 1900s, so they spent decades convincing people to sterilize themselves. Modern progressives show that it has succeeded. Yeah, but abortion can also be medically necessary, just to be clear. And because I believe in the rights of individuals, I do believe that first trimester abortions must remain legal, along with medical exceptions. And I'm not going to change my opinion on that. Late-term abortions are unethical. Again, unless the woman's life is in danger, you're right on the cusp of viability, but not there yet. Okay, that's one thing. Getting an elective procedure at like 8 months, no, it's clearly not okay. But in some states, it is legal. And that's really the problem. That's why this entire thing happened. Andy, rabbit is a great sustainable meat. I have some rabbit haunches frozen out in the freezer, but I wasn't allowed to make bunny stew because Liz said that she wouldn't eat it. The problem is I can't eat 2 big-ass rabbit haunches in a big-ass pot of stew myself. It's too many servings. I mean, what am I going to do? Am I going to pound down 2 servings at a time, 3 meals a day for like 3 days? I just can't do that. At some point, even a really delicious stew, it gets a little bit old. Celery starts to get a little soggy. Maybe the rabbit gets a little bit more gamey. You know, the sauce starts separating and it just doesn't look as good. You have to keep recooking it. Lance Corporal Veteran, guns or local politics? Which wins fighting feds? Local politics. If you try to use guns, you end up getting killed. Joker 1 on Rumble. Life Loafers Lindsay is doing cocaine Mitch's bidding. If Mitch can't control MAGA senators, he has no use for them. Mitch's power and his shipping magnate wife's power is all he cares about. Shank Uger's Sweaty Gunt. Oh, if you haven't, you got to see the Jones and Crowder thing. They are actually literally retarded. Sad. By the way, getting to Rumble chats there. If you are watching on YouTube, keep in mind, I will be doing exclusive Rumble live streams sporadically for some time to come. Possibly using other new tech sites as well on those streams. Odyssey, BitChute, if it gets that functionality in the future. I'd love to have a trifecta. That would be interesting. And then I can speak much more freely. So if you want even more edgy content than me, saying the things that I'm already saying now, join me on Rumble. We're very close to 110,000 subscribers, and I don't think that InfoWars has quite clinched its lead over us. Let me check in real time here for everyone's benefit. We have 109,620 subscribers, so we've got less than 400 to go. InfoWars is at 109,945. They've still got 55 to go. We've closed the gap significantly just since we began broadcasting. Take the link that's pinned at the top of chat or in the description and join up on Rumble. You will get exclusive content every day anyway if you like the one-off videos, so why the hell aren't you following me on these new tech sites? You can't handle the clank. Speaking of which, it's fine. Get myself more caffeinated here. And I got the big spoon today. Only because all the little ones were dirty. Forgot to put the wash on last night. Oops. Soy Jack pointing meme. Sticks, I'm a big fan. Have been for a while now. But your earlier assertion that the French Empire was more benevolent than the British Empire is your worst take ever. Not throwing shade, but you were way off. I stand by my position. I think I rather would have gotten taken over by the French than the British. Imagine the Germans march in. Then you've got a real problem. Deutsch Chad, do you think Trump or any Republican could get in office in 2024, or will they throw the real numbers and stay in office? Or will they use his win as a reason for riots and destruction of the U.S.? They will definitely riot and raise hell if he wins. And the legacy media, instead of calling it insurrectionist or violent, they'll say it's mostly peaceful. Only a few fires were started. They only did $2 or $3 billion of damage to D.C. or something like that. They did that when Kavanaugh was confirmed. You'll remember there were riots in D.C., forcing the White House to go into blackout mode. Very little coverage. Wasn't considered an insurrection. You're not harming democracy. You're just frustrated. You poor people. You're right to be frustrated. Trump is cheapening the judiciary. Aussie's robots. Notice how high energy prices in Europe are forcing closures of more small businesses lockdown style? How about sending a few hundred migrants to Beverly Hills and open trucks hillbilly style? Clank. That would be hilarious. And around here, no, I haven't seen any business closures. The Dutch didn't really have a hefty lockdown. Like even when there were mask mandates, I ignored it. I saw other people ignoring it. Nobody gave a damn. I didn't wear a mask when I went to the store. I got told exactly once that I should put it on. I feigned ignorance and said, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot it at home. And she's like, oh, well, the checkout person, oh, well, we've got masks right here. And I'm like, oh, no, I have one. I just forgot it at home. I'll bring it next time. I never saw her again. I think maybe she got fired at some point or left the job. I never got queried again. I went to the store hundreds of times, and not just the local Jumbo. I went to Albert Heijn. I went to Hema. I went to Kruidvat. I went to a bunch of stores. I never got told to put a mask on. They didn't give a shit. Neither did some other people. I saw people all the time without masks on. No social distancing. That's a joke if you're in the Netherlands. They never, even during the peakest of times, only one goddamn time during the entire period for several years almost, did I ever get pushed back by somebody during the social distancing period. And of course, it was an old dude who looked like he was paranoid anyway. Tulpacourt, those Venezuelans sent to Martha's Vineyard had probably never flown on a plane before. I bet they got a kick out of that. The irony is that they deported a bunch of fellow socialists. I wonder how many of those Karens there, when they were spending time with those people and hearing about the stories of their life, did any of them take it to mind when they said, yeah, I fled Venezuela because socialism goddamn sucks and our power-mad dictator is a far leftoid freak and hyperinflated the currency? I bet that they remained silent and didn't respond to that one. Mr. Wonderful, can you start live Rumble live streams on YouTube and just end the YouTube stream after 5 minutes? Salty and Viva Barnes use that method. No, I prefer to simply make exclusives rather than do that. Andrew Spurzins on Rumble. Usually get a couple rabbits when I go get birds. They mix well in a stew or in a meat pie. Meat pie is something I definitely want to try sometime. I've never had one. A nice game pie with 5 different kinds of goddamn meat. Plenty of carrots, of course. Ultramaga 721. Rumble supports the First Amendment. Bravo, Zulu. Would like to see YouTube fail hard and be bought up by Elon. I don't think he has the money to buy up YouTube. Twitter was the low-hanging fruit site because it's a one-off, basically. Next story. Air Canada just bought a fleet of 30 electric planes that can fly 200 kilometers in all-electric mode. Extremely cool. And I weighed in on this and said, coal-powered planes, how fun. And now I've got salty Canadians that are really, they've gone completely nuts. They think that I failed to fact-check Ontario's energy grid. And it's really very funny. And I was laughing about it. And yes, of course, most of the power in Canada is actually hydroelectric and nuclear. It's a joke. It's one that's used on EVs for the United States. I would point out that there are provinces in Canada that use a considerable amount of coal in their energy grid. Ontario, the one they point to, is simply the one that doesn't. There's also gas, natural gas. There's also other fossil fuel. And then a lot of nuclear, which the green energy lobbies refuse to support nuclear energy. They're semi-right because fossil fuel is required to mine the uranium out and to refine it, just to be clear. The same is true for the lithium in solar panels and battery systems. The same is true from the aluminum in windmills. And the same is true for making the cement, refining that, and then the steel supports and shit you use in a dam, hydroelectric. I'd say hydro is the closest to a more refined green energy, and not everywhere in the world can use it. And you destroy a lot of ecology when you dam up a river anyway. Here's the thing, though. These planes can only go 200 kilometers in electric mode. That's not impressive. They have to then be recharged from a grid that involves fossil fuel. What the hell goddamn benefit, other than this being good for free advertising for them, is this? What benefit does it do to the environment? The aluminum structure of the plane, the titanium in it, the other metals, the rare earth minerals, certainly, all of the components of the plane required fossil fuel from start to finish to be manufactured, put together, and turned into a plane. The vehicles on the runway use, I think diesel fuel, some of them, or gasoline. The airport itself on the energy grid, it's deriving that from nuclear energy, hydroelectric, hydrothermal, coal, gas, etc. There is no such thing as green energy in the sense that climate change fanatics want it to be. There is no self-sustaining green grid possible. You will keep using fossil fuels. At the very least, you have no choice but to continue using them to manufacture the other energy systems until you are efficient enough to self-sustain. I've used the example. Imagine that you have solar panels covering a gigantic factory, and the factory makes solar panels. If efficiency is high enough, and you have a really good efficiency in the recyclability of those panels, you can self-sustain, you can make limitless panels, it's self-replicating. It is possible, by the way, to do that. Not with today's technology. At the current rate, give it 20 or 30 years. But we're not there yet. It's not going to power a goddamn car. It's going to be used for standalone energy production. And the problem is they keep centralizing this shit instead of putting it on existing structures, which makes more sense. Let the home make its own power and have it connected to a loose grid that makes up the difference when necessary, as opposed to having a solar field that takes over 20 fucking football courts worth of what used to be forest in order to power a few homes. It doesn't make any sense. So yeah, Air Canada is getting coal-powered airplanes. I know that that's hyperbolic. Sometimes hyperbole is still very funny and very useful. Seeing them go crazy over it was hilarious. Liz just sent me a link involving Gwen Stefani. Yeah, apparently, oh yeah, she's gotten a lot of surgery or Botox or something. I think we were talking about that actually a few days ago. Yeah, she looks, ooh. I'm not going to bother talking about that as a news story, but it is kind of funny. It's funny when people decide to deform themselves, thinking that it makes them more attractive. Okay, we got a couple more super chats here. We got one more news story, I think, to cover. Oh yeah, we have we have to cover Harris. Oh boy, that's going to be a fun one. Yeah, we're saving the best for last, at least in terms of chuckleability. Sparky, Roe v. Wade was a thing in the first place because recent sexual revolution caused unwed pregnancies in the middle class. Not as taboo, no longer an issue. Yeah, it definitely was the spark that lit that flame, part of it. David Sanders, Sticks, it's only human trafficking if the Republicans do it. Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of hypocrisy to go around. Republicans have some too, just to be clear. I am not a partisan. Now the last news story, Kamala Harris on Twitter. President Joe Biden and I are clear. All our work to address the climate crisis, the non-existent one really, must be grounded in environmental justice and equity. In other words, in a shorter term, fuck science. That's basically what Kamala has come out with. This is the enormous pivot of the green energy, climate change, renewable sort of thing. It's no longer actually about science. It's no longer about preventing deforestation. They're not encouraging people to plant trees. They don't encourage people to pick up trash. They don't encourage people to innovate more efficiency. They don't encourage people to take any steps really to reduce materialism, because that would hurt the economy. If the economy suddenly stops growing, then they get blamed for it, which is why no Dem administration ever tells people, hey, maybe you should buy in bulk less often, travel less, plant some trees, take a little bit of initiative, and look for ways to reuse goods. Like, look at our cupboard, for example. Well, you can't look at it, but if you could. I take jars from food that we eat, canned peas or whatever, and I put them through the dishwasher, get the labels off, and we reuse them. Mainly, I drink out of those as cups. Been doing that since I was a little kid. You can even have handles put on the old bell jars. Those are popular in New England, by the way. Tourists love them, as long as there's some artisanal etching on them. They'll fetch a high price, even though they're pretty much fucking worthless, which is why most people just throw the glass jars into the recycling bin. Glass is one of the few things that is reasonably recyclable, and tin to an extent, if you remove the labels, which half the people don't do. Plastics and so forth, not really. You should just incinerate them. They don't want to tell these inconvenient truths to the population. If you told the people the truth about many things, it would be a problem. Let's take certain pandemics recently, for example. If you told people that the best way to address it was to wash your hands and stay home when you felt sick, people would not like that. They have to take initiative and change something about themselves. It's not something exterior. And they're not being given any concrete command. You can't dictate that people wash their hands, but you can dictate that they wear certain pieces of cloths when they're in certain areas, because it's very visible. It's very evident. You can punish people for not doing that. Kind of hard to do that in a bathroom unless you're going to put security cams over the goddamn toilet stalls. That would be a problem now, wouldn't it? The same is true with environmental NIMBYism. If you are an environmentalist, I happen to be. Try to be less materialistic, reuse things. I take steps to do that when it's possible to do so. It's easier in the US because, we have land and stuff. Gardening, plant a goddamn tree. I've planted plenty of trees. Or take care of the ones that are there. Be kind to the animals and all this other shit. Have a gray water system installed. Nobody wants to do that. All these rich bitches worrying about climate change. How many Martha's Vineyard McMansions do you think have a reusing water situation? No, it just goes all down the drain, and then it goes into the pipe, and then it goes into the ocean. Really great for the turtles. They can get a free meal there. They can eat Joe Biden's and Barack Obama's shit when it comes sliding out there. They don't want to tell people the real truth. Hey, we have to use fossil fuel to maintain the economy. No, it's not really threatening the world. No, you're not all going to die because somebody owns an SUV. Go plant a goddamn tree and mind your own business. Stop being a NIMBYist. Stop using. Why don't they say, hey, plastic, microplastic is raining down on the environment day by day. We're contaminating the whole world with something that hasn't even been around for a century. Why don't we get rid of the plastic containers that are so inefficient and wasteful that you go to the store? Like if I go to the Albertheim, I get a salad, it's wrapped in plastic. Why not use wax paper, something biodegradable? Why don't we switch to something fucking cardboard? Why don't we switch to something that will just be eaten up by the environment and degrade back into the background within a couple of weeks? Because it's less convenient. That's the real truth. Plastic bags in shopping centers are still used for some reason. They should have been gone long ago. I'm not a fan of banning plastic straws. I saw in Italy some places were using tubes made out of noodles, actually, for drinks. That sounds slightly unpleasant, just to be clear. But it is a huge amount of waste. Also, anti-littering campaigns. You should say that the Dutch are the worst litterers that I've ever seen. This country is much more green energy and enviro-friendly and eco and everything. It's a lot more vegan options, and bio is a huge thing for branding here. People bike instead of driving, etc., walkable cities. But they litter a lot. I gotta say, there's as much trash on the ground in rural areas in the Netherlands as in some big cities in the United States. Where the fuck do you think that goes? This is a coastal country. It gets into the canal, into the waterways, and it gets into the ocean. Meanwhile, that one Dutch kid developed that huge trawler to try to pick up trash in the ocean. Well, I guess you're offsetting things a little bit. At least you're making an attempt. Sparky, even with 100% efficient solar panels, there's not enough real estate to power industry. That is false. It would be very, very easy with highly efficient solar panels for a massive proportion of all energy necessary for industrial purposes to come from solar. And you could definitely do it for home purposes. Just disconnect all the houses from the grid, put them on battery systems once we have better efficiency there. Andy, we need to stop using plastics to store food. Yeah, I don't think it should be banned, but I think we need an educational campaign. Just educate people and tell them why it's a bad idea, and at least some people will stop. Some stores will feel the pressure, and it won't just be the hippie market that uses wax paper anymore. I remember back in the 90s, it was all paper bags at the store. Plastic was less common. They had paper bags offered. I remember helping carry groceries home back in the mid-90s for my mom or my dad. And you put the apples and the bananas and shit into paper bags. Well, that paper bag, you leave it out in the rain, a week later, it's a pile of mush. Earthworms will eat it. It's biodegradable. Doesn't even matter if you litter. Well, I mean, it might still be illegal, but it's biodegradable, unlike plastics. Mason Armstrong. Hey, Sticks, what's the writing program you recommend? I just use OpenOffice. I use their writing program. It's sort of like XP or Vista era Microsoft Word, and so it's easier to use the new Word anyway. The new Word sucks. It sucks huge balls. That's why I stopped using it. I was only looking for an alternative. I don't care about having to pay to use it. It's just that the new Microsoft Word, Microsoft Movie Maker, all of the Microsoft Office offerings suck compared to the old ones. They're less functional. If they have more functions, they've become much more convoluted and hard to use, or they lack some of their prior functions. I don't want to work with them. OpenOffice is great, and it's free. It's from Apache. You should definitely use it. Gray water systems are illegal in Florida, says LT. Well, that's not very good. See, I'm a real environmentalist. If I think deforestation's a problem, then I'll plant some fucking trees. I can't wait to do that. When I get my own property in the future, I'm going to tailor every goddamn square inch of it myself. I want an orchard. I want some berry bushes. You know, those are good. And if a bear wanders in, then you've got plenty of free meat because, you know, fuck. And it's nice and greasy too. Bear fat, apparently, I think you can make candles and shit out of that. Or soap. I'll turn the bear into soap and then I'll wash my body with its corpse. And I'll laugh the entire time that I do it. A huge garden, of course, as organic as possible. Kitchen garden, an expanded garden, and a woodlot. That's what I want. I want to get a fairly big piece of land. I'm not interested in big houses like McMansions and fancy living, but a big garden sounds really, really nice. Room to roam. Back in Rutland, it's 2.3 acres, and it's already pretty big. I think I want twice that much, maybe more. I'll see what I can do in the future based on my income. I desperately, though, I do want a nice big garden. You better get it, Sticks. Land is getting harder to find, says Patrick D. It depends on where you're looking. I keep an eye on these things for obvious reasons. Ultramaga721 on Rumble. DARPA is our tax dollars finding innovation, developing it, then suppressing it. Sadly, inventors open source for the good of mankind. Yeah, make sure to invent things yourself. And don't sell out to the industrial powers that be. Try to find private investment opportunities if you're an inventor or innovator or something like that. Not always possible. I mean, think, you may make a new investment and all of a sudden a fancy-ass dude shows up with a $20 million check or something. You may be thinking about the good of mankind, but at the end of the day, you're probably also thinking about your bank account. Unfortunately, most people will side with the latter. No more super chats, by the way, please. We're getting up towards an hour 10 here. The Grizzly Sticks, don't you know the world is ending? You climate denier, all the polar bears will be all dead by 2005. Al Gore told me so. Yeah, Martha's Vineyard should be all underwater. Why are the Obamas still vacationing there? Drennan, get ready to plant a plum tree next to my cherry tree and fig tree. I really want Bartlett pears and peach trees. Because the peach tree back in Rutland, by the way, sad update, is dead. It finally expended itself. And unfortunately, the seedling that I planted, I don't think made it. So that's terrible news. I'm going to have to get something else going. I'm thinking about putting a pear tree there, actually. I like pears. So when they're sun warmed and they're nice and mushy, they're just absolutely spectacular. And those that you don't use, they rot into the ground and then there'll be hornets all over it. And then I can laugh. I've learned the ways of hornets and yellow jackets so that I can actually like scoot them around in the air. It's actually very simple. You just have to have a steady hand. They're looking at everything around them, motion and objects, and they're sort of moving themselves around in accordance with them to find a place to land. If an object is moving towards them non-threateningly, very slowly, it sort of seems to confuse them and they tend to move in the other direction. So if a yellow jacket's floating around you, just put your hand up and gravitate it towards the door, as it doesn't really want to be indoors anyway, because that's stupid. And you can literally push it out the door. It's very interesting. It's kind of like using the Force or some shit. Sparky, BS. There's AC impedance and DC resistance. Can't draw enough current through the cables. Try mass producing aluminum with solar panels. Well, you can store up that electricity and do great things with it. That electricity can be used for chemical reactions that can additionally be quite useful. But yes, it is possible for solar panels to be used as part of a general battery system in order to do most industrial applications. Paracelsus Underrock, of course, abortion is healthcare. Eugenics is about health. Our pear tree is 100 to 120 years old. God damn, says Don Browning. I didn't know that they could live that long. I have to look into trees more. I was always more interested in herbaceous species when I was younger, but having an orchard would be fun. I'm thinking if you alternate between species too, it helps cut down disease potentially, at least the rate at which it spreads. Peaches, figs, plums, apples. Not a huge apple fan for the most part anyway, but Liz likes them, so I guess I'd have to have a couple apple trees. And of course, lots of pears. Peaches are my favorite though, I will say. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to go offline here because we're at an hour 10 and now I'm just mouthing off. Please, to those of you still watching on YouTube, take the link at the top of chat and join Rumble as well. I will begin doing sporadic live streams that will only be on Rumble. They will not be on YouTube. It is a new form of new tech exclusive that I'm branching out into. We are very close. Let's give one final update here on the differential between Clankdom and InfoWars on Rumble for subscribers because we're in a friendly competition. We're at 109,670, and they're at 109,952. At the rate that we're gaining on them, it is still possible for us to overtake them. And when I end this stream, of course, when it goes out to the non-live audience, I expect more people to take the link as well. That's about all. Peace out.